My stepmother tried to break off my engagement as a joke by sending my fiancé photoshopped pictures of me with my lover. So I exposed her for the witch she is, and my dad divorced her. Now she is blowing up my phone, begging me to convince my father to take her back because she has no money or job. So I guess I should start from the beginning because otherwise none of this will make any sense. My name's Ben, I'm 27 and I'm getting married in 3 weeks. Or at least that's the plan. But of course, someone had to go and try to mess it up. I've been with my fiancée Katie for 10 years now. We've been through all the ups and downs you can think of. You know, normal stuff like graduating, getting jobs, surviving our early 20s together. It was all going smoothly, until my stepmom, Karen, decided to blow everything up. Now, Karen's been in my life since I was 14. She married my dad, Tom, when I was in 8th grade. Back then, she seemed pretty cool. I didn't really think much about it at the time. I figured, hey, if my dad's happy, I'm happy. I'd split my time between my mom's place and my dad's, and Karen, well, she acted nice enough at first. You know how people put on that face when they want to make sure you don't mess things up for them? Yeah, that was her. But after they got married, things started to change. Slowly, she started showing her true colors. And let me tell you, they weren't pretty. She'd take little jabs at me when my dad wasn't around. Like, if I had a bad grade or I left a mess somewhere, she'd act like it was the end of the world. But when my dad was there, she was sweet as pie. Made me feel like I was losing my mind sometimes because no one else ever saw her acting like that. There was this one time, I must have been around 15, and I just failed a math test. I was already beating myself up about it, but when I got home, Karen let loose. She gave me this whole speech about how I wasn't applying myself, and that if I didn't get my act together, I'd end up like my mother. Yeah, she went there. I told my dad about it later, and he was like, no, that doesn't sound like her at all. You must be misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Man, I was living with it. At first, I blamed myself. I figured I must have done something to set her off. Maybe I wasn't being welcoming enough or something. But then I realized that was complete BS. Karen didn't have a problem with me. She had a problem with me existing. See, to her, I was this reminder that my dad had a whole other life before her, and I think that really ate at her, so she started picking at me to get me out of the way. When I finally talked to my dad about it, I thought he'd have my back. We sat down, all three of us, for this family meeting. Karen, of course, acted like the victim. She started crying, actual tears, saying she had no idea why I hated her so much. She claimed I'd always been rude to her, never accepted her, and that she was just doing her best to make me feel like part of the family. My dad ate it up. I got kicked out of the conversation and left her alone with him, but I didn't go far. I stayed right outside the door and listened in, because I was desperate to know what was really going on. What I heard? Man, it was like a punch to the gut. She straight up told my dad that I was jealous of her and that I wanted my parents to get back together, so I was making up lies to get her out of the picture. She even said she thought I was the reason none of his other relationships worked out before her. Like, really? The kid was ruining his love life? I mean, get real. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just messing with me. She was playing some twisted game and she was winning. My dad was totally hooked on her. I figured if I said anything more, it would just make me look bad, so I shut up. I told myself I'd just tough it out, not give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose my cool. But here's the thing. When you hold on to all that crap for years, it starts to wear on you. Fast forward to now, and Karen's still around. My relationship with her has always been cold, but when I moved out for college, it got easier. I didn't have to deal with her much anymore. I'd only see her on holidays, and by then I could ignore her little digs. She kept up the act, of course, always trying to get under my skin. Like, she'd ask me stuff like, "So, Ben, when are you going to settle down?" Or, "Do you really think Katie's the one for you?" Speaking of Katie, she's been my rock through all this. She's met Karen, knows the whole story, and even though she was polite to her, she's always known Karen had it out for me. But Katie? She's not easily fooled. She knows me better than anyone. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, right when everything should have been coming together for the wedding, Karen pulls this stunt. Katie gets this text from Karen totally out of nowhere, with these fake photos of me and another woman. The woman in the photos? I barely know her. She's like a neighbor from my old neighborhood, and the pictures were from some group hangout. But Karen had photoshopped it to look like I was with this woman, just the two of us, all cozy like we were on a date or something. Then she went ahead and told Katie that I'd been cheating on her with this woman for months. She even wrote this whole dramatic message about how she was looking out for Katie and didn't want her to marry someone who'd betray her. Can you imagine? My stepmom trying to ruin my life by faking an affair 2 weeks before my wedding? What kind of person does that? But here's where she messed up. Karen thought Katie would freak out and dump me on the spot. She told her not to even bring it up with me, saying it would just cause unnecessary drama and that she didn't want to get in the middle of it. Yeah, right. Karen didn't want to get caught, is what that was. But she underestimated Katie. Instead of believing Karen, Katie came straight to me, showed me the pictures, and asked what the hell was going on. I was in shock. I mean, I knew Karen was petty, but this was a whole new level. I explained everything to Katie, and she believed me right away. She knows me, she knows Karen, and honestly, the photoshopping job was pretty bad. Like, come on, Karen, at least try harder if you're gonna sabotage my life. That's when I decided enough was enough. I called my dad that night absolutely livid. I laid everything out for him, the photos, the lies, the years of crap I'd put up with, and I gave him a choice. Either he kicks Karen out, or I cut them both off. I wasn't playing games anymore. This wasn't just about me. This was about my future with Katie. I wasn't going to let Karen ruin that. So yeah, that's where things started. But trust me, it gets a lot worse from here. So after I made that call to my dad, things really started to get intense. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect him to handle it well. I figured he'd be all confused and probably not know how to react. But when I laid everything out for him, I could tell right away that he was shaken. I think he knew deep down that Karen wasn't who she pretended to be. I mean, no one's that good at hiding who they really are for that long. But even so, he sounded like he needed time to process it all. He told me, "Ben, I'll talk to her. Let me figure this out." Which honestly wasn't what I wanted to hear. Like, at this point, what's left to figure out? The woman photoshopped pictures of me cheating to blow up my relationship. That's not something you just talk about. But I gave him the space, told him to call me back when he'd decided what to do. I didn't feel great about it. I mean, Katie and I are about to get married, and instead of feeling excited, I'm dealing with this insane family drama. But whatever, I thought. I had no choice but to wait it out. A couple of days passed, and I hadn't heard back from my dad. So I tried to stay focused on the wedding plans and all that. Katie, bless her heart, was handling this way better than I was. She kept saying, "Don't worry, Ben, we're going to be fine. Karen's not going to ruin anything." And I wanted to believe her. But I also knew Karen wasn't the type to just back down. I was pretty sure she had more tricks up her sleeve. Then, one night, I get this call from my dad. It's late, like way past the time he'd normally call. Right away, I knew something was up. He sounds, I don't know, defeated? That's the only way I can describe it. He tells me that he confronted Karen about everything, and she denied it all at first, tried to play dumb like she didn't know what he was talking about. Now, you gotta understand, my dad's not the type to just let stuff slide. He's a pretty calm guy, but when he's mad, he's mad. He doesn't blow up, but he gets that serious, quiet tone, and you know he's not messing around. Apparently, that's what happened. He kept pressing her, showing her the texts, the pictures, everything. At first, Karen tried to laugh it off, saying it was all a misunderstanding or some kind of joke. Can you believe that? A joke. Like sending fake cheating photos right before your stepson's wedding is something to laugh about. But my dad wasn't buying it. He kept at her until she finally broke down and admitted it. But here's where it gets even crazier. She didn't just own up to it, she tried to justify it. She told my dad that she was worried about him. She said she was scared that if he paid for my wedding, I'd just keep asking him for more money. She went on this whole rant about how she thought I was going to bleed him dry and that she was just trying to protect their finances. Like, really? That's what she was worried about? And then she started crying. Again, typical Karen. And telling him she only did it out of love for him. That's her whole move, by the way. She screws up, then tries to guilt people by saying she's doing it for their own good. But my dad wasn't having it this time. He told her that this wasn't about money. This was about her trying to destroy our relationship. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I think he actually saw through her BS. I don't know exactly what happened next, but I do know my dad kicked her out. He told her to pack her things and leave, and just like that, she was gone. He said she didn't even try to fight it, just left in silence. I'm not gonna lie, when he told me that, I felt this massive weight lift off my shoulders. It's like all those years of dealing with her crap had finally come to an end. But here's the thing, it wasn't really the end. Not even close. Karen didn't just disappear into the night like I hoped she would. Oh no, she immediately started blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, emails, you name it. She was trying every way possible to get me to convince my dad to take her back. At first, I ignored her, because honestly, I wasn't about to entertain her nonsense. But she kept at it. She started saying stuff like, "I didn't mean for this to happen, and I was just trying to protect our family." And here's the part that really got me. She tried to make it seem like I owed her. Like somehow, it was my responsibility to fix things between her and my dad. She even threw in some sob story about how she didn't have any money or a place to go. She'd quit her job a few years ago to focus on family, more like focusing on controlling everything. So now she was basically broke. That's not my problem though, is it? I wasn't the one who photoshopped fake cheating pics. She sent me this long email from a new address because I'd blocked her on everything else. It was full of all these guilt-tripping lines like, "I never meant to hurt you, Ben," and "I love your father more than anything." She even threw in some crap about how she always tried to be a good stepmother to me. That's when I really lost it. Like, were we living in the same reality? Because the Karen I know has been a nightmare from day one. I didn't respond to any of her messages, obviously, but I did show them to my dad, just so he could see what she was trying to pull. He was pissed, but he told me to just let it go, that he'd handle it. I knew that meant he was done with her for good, which was a relief. Still, it wasn't easy to just move on. I kept thinking about how close she came to ruining everything. If Katie hadn't trusted me, if she'd believed those fake photos, who knows where we'd be right now? I probably wouldn't be sitting here planning a wedding, that's for sure. So yeah, things were looking up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. I mean, she's always been sneaky. She's always had this way of getting what she wants, and I knew she wasn't going to go down without a fight. But for now, I had to focus on the wedding. It was just a couple of weeks away, and after all the drama, I just wanted one thing to go smoothly. But knowing Karen, that wasn't going to happen. Update 1. So, after my dad kicked Karen out, you'd think things would start calming down, right? Nope. Karen, being Karen, had to keep dragging it out. I was already dealing with wedding stress, and now I had her constantly trying to weasel her way back into our lives. I figured blocking her everywhere would be enough, but then she got creative. Katie and I were out one day, checking out some last-minute wedding stuff, and we decided to grab lunch at this cafe near the venue. Everything felt good. We were relaxed, laughing, finally feeling like the wedding was close and we could just enjoy it. Then, right in the middle of our meal, I get a notification. It's Karen. She'd somehow found a way to email me again from yet another account. I guess she really couldn't take the hint. I didn't even want to read it at first. Katie told me to just ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it up, and it was the same old crap. More apologies. More fake remorse. She kept saying how she didn't mean to ruin everything, and how she just wanted the best for all of us. But the tone of the email was off. She was more desperate this time. I could tell she was getting freaked out about the whole situation. She mentioned how she was staying in some cheap motel and running low on money. She was practically begging me to talk to my dad, to fix things between them. She wrote stuff like, "You're the only one who can make this right, Ben. Your father listens to you." Yeah, Karen, he listens to me now because you finally showed him who you really are. The email went on for way too long, but what really caught my attention was this one part where she said, "I'll make sure to stay out of your lives if you just help me get back on my feet." Now that got to me. She was literally trying to bargain her way back in by promising to leave us alone. I showed the email to Katie and she just rolled her eyes. "Ben, she's never going to leave us alone," she said. And honestly, she was right. Karen wasn't someone who could just fade away quietly. That wasn't her style. I didn't reply to the email, obviously, but now I was starting to get this nagging feeling like she wasn't done trying to mess things up. I hadn't talked to my dad in a couple of days, mainly because I didn't want to drag him into more of Karen's mess, but I figured I should at least update him. So I called him that night. When I told him about Karen's latest email, he wasn't surprised at all. In fact, he told me that Karen had been trying to contact him too. She'd left him voicemails, sent him texts, and even showed up at his office one day. He said he didn't let her in, just told security to make her leave. He sounded exhausted, like he was over all of it, and I didn't blame him. I mean, this woman had turned his whole life upside down. What really threw me, though, was what he said next. "She mentioned something about seeing you and Katie soon," he said. I froze for a second. What did that even mean? "What? Like she's going to show up at the wedding?" I asked, half joking but half serious because, let's be honest, with Karen, anything was possible. My dad said he didn't know what she meant by it, but he told me to be prepared just in case. Now I was officially on edge. The last thing I needed was Karen pulling some stunt at the wedding. Katie and I talked about it that night, and we agreed that we'd hire extra security for the day. Yeah, it was a little over the top, but better safe than sorry, right? I wasn't about to let Karen crash my wedding after everything she'd already done. A couple of days later, we were in the final stretch before the big day, and things were actually looking good. We had a plan in place for the wedding, security was all set up, and I was feeling more at ease. Then, guess what? Karen strikes again. Katie and I were doing a final walkthrough of the venue with our wedding planner, and everything was going smoothly. We were talking about seating arrangements and flowers when suddenly, out of nowhere, I see her. Karen. She was standing at the edge of the parking lot just staring at us. I almost couldn't believe it. Like, what the hell was she even doing there? How did she even know we'd be there? I didn't tell my dad about our plans for that day, so the only way she'd know is if she was straight up stalking us. I pointed her out to Katie, and we both just stood there, dumbfounded. I was pissed. I mean, after everything, she had the nerve to show up like that. So I walked over to her, trying to keep my cool. When I got close, she had this smug smile on her face, like she'd won some kind of game. "Ben," she said in this fake, sweet voice, "I just wanted to talk." Talk? Now she wanted to talk? I told her straight up, "This isn't the time or place, Karen. You need to leave." She gave me this look, like she was trying to make me feel sorry for her. "I've lost everything," she said. "Your father won't even speak to me, and I just want to make things right." I didn't even know what to say at that point. Like, lady, you did this to yourself. You don't get to play the victim now. I just told her, "Look, Karen, we're done. You need to move on and stop messing with my life." That's when she really lost it. She started yelling, right there in the parking lot, about how I was selfish, how I'd ruined her marriage, how I was turning my dad against her. It was wild. At this point, the wedding planner and Katie were standing there watching, probably wondering what kind of family drama they'd just walked into. I didn't want to make a scene, so I just told Karen to leave, or I'd call the cops. That got her to back off. She stormed off, yelling something about how I'd regret this. I didn't care. I just wanted her gone. After she left, I stood there for a second trying to wrap my head around what just happened. Katie came up to me and put her arm around me. "She's not going to ruin this for us," she said. And I believed her. Karen could throw all the tantrums she wanted. She wasn't going to stop this wedding. But man, after that, I was on edge again. I knew Karen wasn't going to give up that easily. And now, with the wedding just days away, I had no idea what she'd try next. Update 2. After Karen's meltdown at the venue, I was really hoping that would be the last of her. I mean, how many times can a person embarrass themselves before they get the message, right? But nope, I guess I underestimated her ability to keep coming back like a bad penny. The days leading up to the wedding were supposed to be fun, stress-free, you know? But instead I spent most of that time looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster to drop. Katie, though, was a rock through all of it. I don't know how she managed to keep it together while I was losing my mind every other day. We had a long talk the night after Karen showed up at the venue, and Katie just kept saying, "Ben, she can't control us. We're not letting her ruin this." And she was right. I had to stop letting Karen's drama get in my head. The next day, I went to pick up my tux from the rental place. Nothing too exciting, just one of those wedding checklist things. I was in a good mood because, for once, it felt like we were getting close to the finish line without another Karen-sized issue. I was wrong. I walk into the shop, and who do I see sitting on a bench outside? Yep, Karen. I swear she's like a professional stalker at this point. I almost turned around and left, but I wasn't going to let her scare me off. I had too much to do. As I walked past her, she stood up and blocked my path. "Ben, please, just hear me out," she said. I could tell she was trying to act all calm and reasonable, but I wasn't having it. "Karen, I don't have time for this. I told you to stop," I said, trying to keep it together, even though I was fuming inside. She didn't move. "I need to talk to you. It's important. Just 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." I gave in, figuring maybe if I heard her out, she'd finally leave me alone. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end well. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. 5 minutes, go." She started rambling on about how she and my dad hadn't officially filed for divorce yet, and how she still had hope they could fix things. She kept saying how she regretted everything, and how she was willing to change. I just stood there, waiting for her to get to the point. Then she dropped the line that almost made me lose it. I was thinking, maybe if you talked to your dad, explained that this was all a misunderstanding, maybe he'd reconsider, she said. "You know how much he respects your opinion." I stared at her, completely stunned. She still didn't get it. After everything she'd done, she still thought I'd be the one to fix things for her. Like, how delusional can someone be? "Are you serious right now?" I asked, not even trying to hide my frustration. "You want me to help you after everything you've done?" She looked at me with this pathetic expression, like she thought I was actually going to feel bad for her. "Ben, I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to protect our family. I love your father, and I love you too." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "You love me? Really? You tried to ruin my wedding. You've made my life hell since the day you married my dad. And now you're asking for my help? She looked like she was going to cry, but I wasn't falling for it. Karen, you need to move on, it's over. My dad's done, and so am I. That's when she snapped. The calm, reasonable act went out the window. She started yelling right there in front of the shop about how I was turning my dad against her, how I was destroying her life. She even accused me of stealing my dad from her. It was wild. People walking by were staring, and I could feel my face getting hot from embarrassment. I didn't even bother responding. I just walked past her and went into the shop. I could hear her still yelling as I left her outside. The whole thing was a mess. Later that day, I called my dad to tell him what happened. He wasn't surprised. Apparently, Karen had been trying to pull the same stunt with him, showing up at his office, leaving notes at his door. He told me he was done with her, but honestly, I didn't believe him. I've seen too many people get sucked back into Karen's drama. She's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you get. I didn't hear from Karen for a few days after that, and I started to think maybe, just maybe, she'd finally gotten the hint. I was wrong. It was 2 days before the wedding, and Katie and I were meeting up with my parents for a final dinner before the big day. We were sitting at this nice little restaurant, just chatting about the wedding and the honeymoon plans, when my dad's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I could see his face tense up. "What's wrong?" I asked, already knowing it wasn't good. "It's Karen," he said, putting the phone down. "She's threatening to show up at the wedding if I don't talk to her." My heart sank. I knew it. I knew she wouldn't just let it go. My dad looked at me, his face full of regret. "I'm sorry, Ben. I thought I could handle it, but she's not backing down." Katie reached over and squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out," she said, but I could see the worry in her eyes too. We spent the rest of the night coming up with a plan. We couldn't risk Karen showing up and ruining the wedding. My dad offered to hire extra security, but I wasn't sure if that would be enough. I knew Karen. If she wanted to cause trouble, she'd find a way. As we were leaving the restaurant, my dad pulled me aside. "Ben, I'm sorry you have to deal with this. I should have seen this coming a long time ago." I shook my head. "It's not your fault, Dad. Karen's always been like this. We just didn't see it until now." He nodded, but I could tell he was beating himself up about it. I didn't blame him, though. Karen had fooled a lot of people over the years. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about what Karen might do. Part of me wanted to believe she wouldn't actually show up, but the other part of me knew she was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The wedding was 2 days away, and I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was that Karen wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Update 3. The wedding day finally came, and I was on edge from the moment I woke up. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was excited. I was finally marrying Katie, and that was all I ever wanted. But Karen had been lurking in the back of my mind for days, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to try something. Even with the extra security we had lined up, I still felt like we weren't totally in the clear. Katie and I had talked about it 100 times. We knew there was a chance Karen would show up, and we were ready to handle it if she did. But honestly, we were both hoping she'd finally gotten the hint and would stay far away from our wedding. Spoiler, she didn't. I spent the morning getting ready with my groomsmen. Just the usual stuff, you know? Trying to stay calm, joking around to keep my mind off the potential disaster that could be looming. The venue was all set up, and Katie was somewhere across the hall getting ready with her bridesmaids. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from my dad saying, "Karen's here." But everything seemed fine so far. No news was good news, right? That was until about an hour before the ceremony. I was standing in the back room with my best man Mark when my phone buzzed. I saw it was a text from my dad, and my stomach immediately dropped. I opened it up, and sure enough, it was exactly what I didn't want to see. Karen's outside the venue. Security's holding her at the gate. I stared at the message for a second. Like maybe if I didn't respond, it would somehow make the problem go away. But I knew that wasn't how things worked. Karen had actually shown up. She'd really crossed that line. Mark saw the look on my face and asked what was up. I told him the situation, and he gave me this look like, "Dude, what do we even do now?" I didn't have a clue, but I wasn't about to let Karen ruin the biggest day of my life. So I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He picked up right away. "Ben, she's refusing to leave," he said, sounding exhausted. "Security's doing their best, but she's making a scene." Of course she was. Karen never did anything quietly. "What's she even saying?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "She's going on about how you're making a huge mistake, how she has proof that Katie isn't right for you." My dad sounded pissed. "It's the same nonsense she's been spewing for weeks." "All right, keep her there. Don't let her anywhere near the venue," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll be right out." I hung up and turned to Mark. I'm going to deal with this. Just keep Katie calm. Don't let her know what's going on, all right? Mark nodded. You got it, man. You sure you want to handle this? I didn't really want to, but what choice did I have? Karen wasn't going to leave unless I made it clear once and for all that she had no place in my life anymore. I walked out to the front of the venue, where the security guys were standing at the gate. Sure enough, there she was, standing there with that same look on her face, like she was some sort of martyr, like she was the victim here. It made me sick. The security guard spotted me and nodded. This her? He asked, like he didn't already know. Yeah, I sighed. I'll talk to her. Karen's eyes lit up when she saw me and she stepped forward, but the guard put his hand out to stop her. Ben, thank God, she said, like I was her savior or something. Please, just let me talk to you. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking this was going to be a conversation. Karen, what the hell are you doing here? I said, keeping my distance. I'm trying to save you from making a huge mistake, she said, like she was genuinely concerned. I've been trying to reach you, but you keep shutting me out. You need to listen to me. Katie isn't right for you. She's been lying to you this whole time. Here we go again. I couldn't believe she was pulling this same crap even now. Karen, you're delusional, I said straight up. There's nothing you can say or do that's going to change what's happening today. I'm marrying Katie and you're not welcome here. She flinched, like my words actually hurt her. Ben, please, I have proof. I overheard her talking to someone about how she's only with you for your money. She's going to ruin your life. I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. How far was she willing to go with this? She'd already faked photos of me cheating, and now she was making up some ridiculous lie about Katie. You really don't know when to quit, do you? I said, shaking my head. Katie doesn't care about my money, and you know that. You're just trying to tear us apart because you're miserable. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. This ends now, Karen. You need to leave. I'm serious. You've already lost my dad, and if you keep this up, you'll lose any chance of ever having a relationship with me again. Get out of here, or I'll have security drag you out. Your choice. I could see her starting to panic. She wasn't used to people standing up to her like this. She was used to manipulating her way through situations, but this time, it wasn't working. She glanced at the security guys, then back at me, her face going pale. Please, Ben, don't do this, she said, her voice shaking now. I'm your family. No, you're not, I said, my voice steady. Not anymore. She stood there for a second, looking like she didn't know what to do. Then, finally, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, waiting to make sure she was really leaving. I didn't turn around until I saw her car pull out of the lot and disappear down the street. I let out a long breath, feeling the tension leave my body for the first time in weeks. She was gone, finally. When I walked back into the venue, Mark was waiting for me. Everything good? He asked. Yeah, I said, smiling for what felt like the first time all day. She's gone. He clapped me on the back. Good. Let's get you married, man. And that's exactly what happened. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Katie looked absolutely stunning. And when I saw her walking down the aisle, everything else just faded away. For the first time in forever, it felt like Karen wasn't looming over us anymore. It was just me, Katie, and the start of our new life together. And you know what? We had the perfect day. No more drama, no more Karen, just us.